Hey folks, Faz here. Sorry this isn't a roleplay. I know that's what most people are subbed for, but there's something that's been on my mind that I wanted to ramble about for a bit. So that's what this is. This is just going to be a big, long ramble. So if you like that kind of thing, you're welcome. Feel free to use it as a sleep aid or something like that. I quite like these kinds of audios where it's just a long, kind of silly ramble, unscripted. I don't even have bullet points. But I've been thinking about this thing a lot, so I'm hoping that will give me some structure to my thoughts. So let me start at the beginning. Since my first video, and every video since, all my stuff has been tagged M4A. That means male for anyone. I'm the male in this situation. I'm a guy. And anyone means anyone of any gender identity, or no gender identity. And I like it that way. I like to make stuff that makes as many people happy as possible. And I also think it's really important to include people who both aren't one specific gender or don't have any gender or, don't really fit into a neat label. I think anyone really does cover anyone. Most of my audience, according to YouTube Analytics, identifies as female. Let me see what the current specific number is. But I still think it's important to me to make... so 90.2% of my audience are female according to the settings on the YouTube account. 7.7% are male and 2.1% user specified. I guess that means, I don't know if Google and YouTube have an other box for gender now. I hope they do. But I suppose it can't show the statistics for each specific thing entered there. But yeah, so despite the fact that 90% of my audience identify as female, I like making content for as many people as possible. And so I've tagged them all as M4A, and all my scripts have been written gender neutrally, right? So I never apply a specific gender to the listener. I don't talk about what specific configuration of body parts they might have, even though I think your configuration of body parts and your gender are separate things. Men can have vaginas and women can have penises. Faz says trans rights. But yeah, I've never said anything that could imply a specific gender about the listener. I don't think I've ever referred to the listener with any specific set of pronouns, but if I have done, I hope I remember to use they or them to keep it neutral. I know there are some people out there who explicitly do not want to be called they, them, and would prefer to have their real pronouns used rather than a neutral set, but I think that's as close as you can get if you're recording M4A. And for the most part, that doesn't cause any real issues. It does mean it takes a little longer to write my scripts and plan things out, because when you're imagining a scenario, you are imagining a specific person, right? Like I'm not sitting there imagining these scenarios and it's just like a black empty space where the listener goes. There's going to be a specific person there, maybe not a specific human being, but a specific kind of person. They might be a man, they might be a woman, they might be more masculine or feminine, but there's going to be some character there filling in the space of the listener. And that person filling in that space is going to have a gender identity of some kind. But I have to try to ignore that completely when I'm writing my scripts. So it takes a little bit of extra time and effort to write a script in a way that is completely gender neutral for the listener. But I think it's worthwhile putting that effort in. And I will continue to do that as often as I can. My audios will be M4A, and the intended listener will be gender neutral, and So anyone can listen to and enjoy it, despite the fact that the vast majority of people who listen are women, according to YouTube analytics. But that's recently become harder because I've been working on making exclusive stuff for people who have supported me on Patreon. If you're one of those people, I'm incredibly grateful. At first, I wasn't really sure about doing the whole Patreon exclusive thing, and I've had a Patreon set up for a while now where you could just subscribe to support me if you wanted without getting anything else extra on top of it. But just recently, I've posted 2 exclusive things on Patreon. One script from one of my original videos, just as a kind of behind-the-scenes little tidbit. It's not really worth that much. But I also posted a kind of a spicier extra for the Sleepy Voice Notes roleplay that I did, where I get a bit more explicit, more than I'd want to be on YouTube. So if you're interested in that, think check out my Patreon. Easiest way to get there is patreon.com/phasmidasmr. Also important to note that I'm going to be putting my prices up soon, but that's kind of not related to this video. But if you subscribe now, you'll get that price forever. Okay, just saying. But that's really not what this is about. This video isn't to plug my Patreon. I've really struggled to write convincing, natural sounding, more explicit things that stay gender neutral. Found it really, really hard. I've tried a couple of times now to write a script for a more explicit Patreon exclusive thing. And I've also tried to improvise one, and I deleted them all because I just wasn't happy with it. I really probably shouldn't have deleted. I should have posted anyway and asked for feedback, and that's probably what I'm going to do from now on, but I was feeling kind of insecure about it. And what was really, really hard was when you're being more explicit about things, you want to describe and get more specific about what you're doing to the person that you're interacting with in this roleplay scenario, right? And you might want to describe their body in some way. You might also want to compliment them or tell them how you think they look. And even that can be kind of gendering, right? A lot of the words we use to describe how good you think someone looks are kind of gendered. A lot of people would not choose to call a woman handsome because handsome is traditionally seen as masculine. And kind of similar with beautiful. Now, I don't mind as a bloke being called beautiful. I think it's a lovely compliment. But some people are going to feel that being called beautiful means they are feminine in some way. I think these are all problems that really are issues in broader society, not just in audio role plays on YouTube. It's silly that we gender compliments in this way, but lots of people do, and it takes a concerted effort to take yourself out of that kind of gender binarist sort of thought, because it's drilled into us from birth. You'll hear a beautiful woman, but you'll much less often hear a beautiful man. You'll hear a handsome man, but hearing a handsome woman, it's almost, to some people, being called a handsome woman is almost like an insult, because you get the impression that it means you look manly or something. And I think that's all very silly, but it's also an undeniable fact of society that people have these innate responses to specific kinds of language. And then, it's not just that; it's also describing the body of, whoever it is in this scenario. In a more explicit scenario, I might want to talk about the potential listeners, penis or breasts or vagina. These things that are associated with gender, even though they shouldn't be, because again, men can have vaginas and women can have penises. Men can have breasts. That's just how it is. That's a fact. It's nonetheless impossible to ignore the fact that to lots of people, describing those body parts is gendering. And also, if the listener themselves doesn't have those parts, even though they identify as the gender that it kind of targets. If I released an explicit audio and labeled it as M for F, right, male for female, and in it I talked about the listener having traditionally, female associated body parts, but someone who listened to it was maybe a trans woman, and hadn't yet transitioned or wasn't planning to transition medically, physically, and didn't have those parts, that would be potentially uncomfortable to them. And I don't want to make someone uncomfortable by targeting something at a gender, but then using that to mean that I can then talk about things that aren't necessarily related to gender, like having a specific set of genitals. It's an awkward thing to talk about, but I think, I don't know if... I think making these kinds of explicit audios of the sort that I will do a lot more often very soon on Patreon is kind of sex work, I think. And I think this must be something that is spoken about in sex work communities, and possibly also in the ASMR kind of these sorts of comfort roleplay communities too. I'm not that heavily involved, so I don't know what other people are talking about, but I hope this is something that there are ongoing conversations about. But you'll notice, and you'll see on YouTube all over the place, people will post audios labelled M for F or F for M, or M for M and F for F. There's plenty of gay and lesbian stuff out there if that's what you want. But using that label, they will then assume certain things about the listener. If an audio is labelled M for F, you can generally assume that the actor, the speaker, is going to assume that the listener is feminine, and probably that the listener has a certain set of body parts. They probably have breasts and a vagina, and those genitals and body parts typically associated with being a woman. But that just isn't true. There'll be plenty of people who identify as female, but who are very masculine, and who do not have that set of body parts. They have a different set. And that's normal, and that's how society is, and that's how it should be. But I think these tags that are put on videos can be excluding of people who don't fit really neatly into that gender binary. And I think that's a bad thing. Now, I don't mean to criticize people who use those tags, because I think it's just the norm, and it is considered normal to do that. And I understand why people do it, and also I'm not sure if there's a very good alternative. If you want to make more specific role plays where you talk about explicit things, almost to a degree, what choice do you have? I've thought about, okay, well, if I want to talk about specific body parts that that the listener might have, maybe that is how these audios should be labelled. Should they be labelled listener has penis, listener has breasts, rather than referring to their gender as shorthand for those things? Or should maybe I take the kind of more pragmatic route and go, well, yes, there is going to be a certain proportion of the population who is, who identify as a woman, for example, who are a woman for all intents and purposes, because someone's gender identity is their gender. So someone who is a woman but does not have breasts and does not have a vagina. Should I accept that that's a proportion of the population, but it is a small proportion, and I'm only one person, I can only do so much work, I need to focus on the largest group and make stuff for them, and then I'm still pleasing, I'm still making stuff that makes the majority of people happy, but that just doesn't make me comfortable. I do feel a need personally to try to, cater for people who are often forgotten. And obviously it's not just about people who might be trans as well. There are lots of other reasons why, for example, a woman may not have breasts. Breast cancer patients, for example. If a woman has had a mastectomy, then, she's a woman without breasts. So talking about assuming that someone has a certain set of parts just because of their gender identity is not right. So that's what I've been struggling with. And that's what this silly ramble is all about. I don't really know what the answer is. I really want to start posting more explicit stuff on Patreon. So catch me over there if you like. And again, my prices are going to be going up soon. But if you subscribe now, you'll get that price forever for as long as you stay subscribed. So consider subscribing. Definitely new stuff coming there soon. But that's what I've been kind of struggling with, is how to label it, how to write this stuff for my M4A audience. The kind of conclusion I'm coming to now is, yeah, I'm going to just have to be a bit more, I'm going to have to target my stuff to a more specific audience, at least for the more explicit things that I do on Patreon. As much as I kind of don't want to do that, I can't think of a way around it that still results in a naturalistic script. So I think on there you may start seeing stuff from me that is specifically labeled M for F, the F meaning, it's just horrible to say it, kind of conforming, gender conformist women who have a certain set of parts. Whether they're cis or trans, that doesn't really matter. So, yeah. Tell me what you think about all this in the comments. It's a difficult topic, and I should shut up, by the way. I'm a cis white male, and my opinion on all this really doesn't matter. I'm just trying to work my way through it, and treat as many people as fairly as I can, and not exclude people just by kind of following the grain. But equally, I'm only one guy, and I can't, part of me was like, I should make multiple versions of everything for every combination of gender identity and configuration of someone's body. But that just wouldn't be feasible. I don't have the time. So, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you've used this as a sleep aid, well, good night, and I hope you sleep well. Consider subscribing on Patreon before my prices increase. Sorry, I keep plugging that. I feel awful. New stuff coming soon. I've kept up a pretty good cadence this week, haven't I? I think I released like 3 things in a week. Happy about that. I'm going to keep that up for at least the next week. I've been signed off work sick for a little bit, so I've been doing this to kind of fill the time. Join my Discord server if you want to have conversations much sillier and more light-hearted than this one. phasmidasmr.com/Discord is the easiest way to get there, or find the link on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for 3,000 subscribers. I'm incredibly grateful. I'm now going to read to you the names of the people who have subscribed on Patreon so far. I don't read them aloud in my videos because they are roleplays, but they appear in text. But here I'm going to read these names of these wonderful, beautiful people aloud. Forgive me if I mispronounce anything. Thank you so much to Akane Neko, Ataraxi, Kami Neutron, Charming Angel, Crystal, Eiku, Emily Mix, Guru, Hey Hey, I ship us Taekun, Idayu Shapri, Joy Binkley, Kai, Ramen Noodles, Sachazaki, yeah, Sprite Amber, Zaruta Raw, Tofu Summer, and Trine Engebretson. Trina Engebretson? Again, sorry for any mispronunciations. To all of you, thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. The prices you're paying now won't change. When I put the prices up, you'll stay on those tiers and you'll get the same things you've always gotten. And sometime in the next day or two, I'm going to swap my tiers out and they'll be a little more expensive. Not a huge amount. Currently it's £1, £3 a month, or £5 a month. It's going to go up to 1, 5 and 10. So consider subscribing now. Thank you for listening. Please do tell me what you think about this issue in the comments section. And, if you have any strong opinions about what I should do, how I should label my stuff, whether you're okay with me moving away from making exclusively M for A things and going more specific with the kind of gender audience, I'd be really grateful for anyone's views. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.